It feels like What You Talking About, Mr. Drummond and Dr. Mauer were introduced to this season because Severance is taking two primary antagonists of season one, Miss Cobel and Mr. Milchick, and turning them into supportive characters for our heroes?
And listeners are going to hate me even more after this podcast. We will discuss those things and more on the Double P podcast presentation of Milchick Men, a podcast about Apple TV Plus's show Severance Season 2. Tonight we're covering Episode 8. My name is Catfish, and with me, as always, is someone who hasn't stopped hitting the ether since he was 7 years old. It's Bubba.
Catfish, I'm so glad to be joined by you, someone with a liar's mouth. What? Guys, we are talking about Season 2, Episode 8, Sweet Vitriol. A Lumon loyalist faces old demons while searching for a missing item. Catfish, this is a rating. You just go online. Wild opinions about it. And because of that, and because you've gone first all season long, I'm going to give my rating first.
Let's hear it.
Listeners have been tough on me because I give things a Severance 7 at times, which I think, Severance is a great show. And so just because I love episode 4 so much, I put other episodes as a 7. Doesn't mean I don't like them, but just on the scale, if episode 4 for me was a 10, some of the other episodes were a 4. So I'm going to be a bit fine and give this 8 double S's out of 10.
Double S's?
Well, double S's stands for Sexy Sissy. She is the new hero of the FMK game we always do. Somebody who is strong in her beliefs and won't be changed by whichever way the wind is blowing. And there in Salt's Neck, the wind blows an awful lot. Sissy is strong and sexy. She's got a fire going, if you know what I mean, down below. So let's talk about what I think is positive about this episode that people have strong reactions.
Please, let's move along, please.
The thing about, you need to laugh verbally. This is an audio podcast. For everybody on audio, okay. Catfish was laughing so much at my witty exchanges, my witty rating.
But those on YouTube can see that I buried my head in my hands in shame.
Both are true. So let's talk about some positives. The great thing about Severance is how it makes us, after episodes, we can go back and look and go, oh, wow, look at this. Ooh, wow, look at this. Earlier this week, somebody reached out to us and was talking about, do you remember back in Season 2, Episode 4, during the Ortbo, Irving was like, hey, there's this dead seal-looking thing. Let's eat it. Mr. Milchick, we're starving. And it felt odd at the time he was saying that, but a couple episodes later, we see Mark going through reintegration, and he's ordering pretty much every item at the Chinese menu because he's very hungry. Does this mean that Irving was going through reintegration back in episode 4 because he wanted to eat the seal? He screamed he was starving. That's the kind of fun this show can give us.
Okay. So you're not saying that Mark was having sweet and sour seal at the Chinese restaurant?
You know what? You got to get the meat where you can. Now with these tariffs, you got to grab any available meat you can.
Got it.
But it's the way the show can open up possibilities. It was back in episode 3 of this season. Helena said to Miss Cobel, you overestimated your contribution and underestimated your blessings. We know Helena can be stone cold, but you see this episode and what Miss Cobel really did for the company, did to help create Severance, and Helena saying, you overestimated your contribution? Oh, hell no. Miss Cobel, come out swinging. Now,
I would bet anything that Helena doesn't know that it was Ms. Cobel who developed it.
Don't try to protect your girl, Catfish. She knows.
Sorry. Okay, sorry.
Now, there are a million things, and you see it with people online who really didn't like this episode. There are a million things that kind of eat at me as I watch this episode. I have an innate belief, a prejudice, you would almost say, that people who are educated in cults, I really have a hard time believing they're able to create brilliant brain devices. So if Miss Cobel really was educated at Myrtle Egan School for Girls, and yet somehow that education got her to the point where she could create severance chips,
I mean,
Man.
not to mention, Bubba, to support your fact, essentially she was working as child labor, presumably 10 hours a day, and to take a break from that, she was huffing ether. So it really seems like this seems slightly unbelievable.
Or the ether really opened up her education. And so kids, let's act like Bugs Bunny and sniff some ether. Now, there's also the thing about this season. I've said ad nauseum, this is the best show on television. And as I say that, and I talk about how episode 4 is the one I'm going, that's the 10 out of 10, just in my humble opinion. The pacing of this season does feel a bit odd. Even episode 4, that one I loved, it's like the team had just been reunited in episode 3. And then in episode 4, they're broken apart again. Irving's off the any MDR team. So the pacing feels a bit odd. But in the end, when the episode was over, I was like, you know what? It was a change of pace. You know, a lot of times shows have change of paces because it's like, boy, we've spent every episode here at the hospital where everybody's a doctor. Let's have a change of pace episode where the doctor spends the whole time away from the hospital. This show doesn't need a change of pace episode. This show changes pace seemingly every episode, and that's why the pace can feel so odd in season 2. I've gone a long way to say it was a weird experience watching it, but at the end, I'm 8 out of 10. Too many words, apologies for that. Catfish, what is your rating for Sweet Vitriol?
All right, so I was a little harsh last week. I got dinged by a lot of people appropriately. I think in retrospect, I was a little harsh.
Whoa.
There was a lot of amazing things that happened, and we got to see some truly incredible stuff, even though we focused mostly on one person. So I've learned my lesson, and I am going to give this episode, which focuses on one person, 7 double S's out of 10.
Wait, sexy sissies?
No, silo similarities.
Oh, no. Silo, here we go.
Discussed Silo as well, and a lot of the time it's what you talked about. It is the pace. We're tumbling forward, we're tumbling forward, we're tumbling forward. And then whatever people feel about the last episode, and I understand people who thought it was amazing, to have 2 episodes in a row where basically we spend the entire time with one person really feels like we are really putting the brakes on. Now, there was some good stuff in this. We found out, as you said, that Cobel is the mastermind, rising from ether huffing child labor to developing Severance. And we realized because of this, and now we still thought that, she had a real dedication to Kier. She was brought up in the cult. But now seeing this episode, it makes me think that maybe she is the right person to help Mark. And I was completely wrong about Devin. You know what? Whatever Devin says, I'm going to believe, unless it's about her husband, because this is the right person to contact. The bad, and again, this is what I'm going to say, is a whole episode on Cobel. We spent a lot of time getting to know her this late in the season. It's really putting the brakes on. I feel like we could have done this a little bit better. It's a similarity to last week where we saw with Gemma. It was like, okay, we got it. We got it. And people love seeing the different ways she tortured. It really hit the nail on the head. But I feel like to spend an entire episode of, now granted, this was a short episode. This was like 37 minutes. This was a short episode, but it's all on Cobel. I just thought, again, the silo similarities where it's like we're barreling forward and then all of a sudden we come to a break. It's a nice reset. I can understand if people are like, great, I wanted to know all this and I wanted it to be an entire episode. Even though I should have learned my lesson from rating last week low, I feel like they really doubled down. And they not only doubled down on spending an entire show with one person, but they doubled down. Like, it's like the writers, every time they sat down to write an episode, they thought, 8 months from now, what's Bubba going to think about this? Well, Bubba's going to say, do we need more of Ms. Cobel? And they said, yeah. So you know what? For Bubba, we're going to do a whole episode about Cobel. So once again, Bubba, I blame you.
Catfish, do you remember when I was talking about Miss Cobel? I believe on our last podcast, I was like, we need Miss Cobel back on the show because we need antagonists in the any work floor, and then also we need antagonists outside. Well, it sure doesn't appear like Miss Cobel's going to be an antagonist so much anymore. I hope she is. She's a great antagonist. I think she can be anti-Lumen and still be an antagonist to Mark and our heroes.
She would be a great antagonist to Lumen. I mean, let's face it, the antagonists do need some help on the outside because the only person they got is Ragabi, and she doesn't know what she's doing. Well, I wouldn't say she doesn't know what she's doing. She'll eventually know what she's doing after she tries to do this to about 7 or 8 more people to integrate them.
I was going to say about 7 or 8 more Lumen offices. She's like, all right, we've messed up the office in Kier. Where to next? Hey, we love to say, who cares what we think? We want to know what you think. And when we say, who cares what we think, maybe we're talking a bit out of both sides of our mouth because we're like, hey, who cares what we think? We want to hear what you think, yet at the same time we say, hey, we're your friend. You're the third friend in our friendship circle talking about this great show, Severance. And if your friend had a crazy idea, like last week's incredible episode on Gemma was only 7 out of 10, you would say something to your friend. So I guess, who cares what we think to a certain degree? But hey, we do want to know what you think, and we got some great feedback on this episode 8 of season 2, Catfish. What did Molly say?
I'm ready. I'm bracing for the abuse I'm going to get for last week, but at least I've got a slight respite here because someone, Molly Womp, talking about this episode 8, said the episode was interesting, but this season has made me nostalgic for when we used to spend more time on the severed floor. I give it 7 out of 10 double C's.
Double C's, Molly?
Cold Cobels. Thank you, Molly Womp. There's at least one person who won't be attacking me this next week or who will turn off this podcast and decide to eschew it forever because of my rating. Bubba?
Yeah.
Someone who's more along with you is Gen X Cat Mom, another faithful listener who always gives us some material for up top, and we appreciate that. It says 9.5 double R's.
Double R's?
You know what? For Gen X Cat Mom, this is low. Gen X Cat Mom likes to use 10 as like the lowest. So I'm going to consider that Gen X Cat Mom agrees with me by giving it 9.5 double R's.
Wait, I'm pretty sure I've already asked. Double R's?
Yeah, recontextualizing revelations.
Ooh, very
Seriously,
good.
Harmony's character from season 1, episode 1 onwards takes on a new dimension that demands a series rewatch. It's got me wondering if she tried the first chip before it's perfected, hence the Cobel Selvig personas. Also, her aunt is a total hag.
What?
Oh, Bubba, thank
Aunt
God she
Sissy.
pushed back against you. You know what? I love what Gen X Cat Mom is saying, but I want to, if Gen X Cat Mom, I would push back on that, and I would say, feels like there weren't really the Cobel Selvig personas. It really felt like she was playing a game and really wanted to get in there, and that her attitude towards Lumen has only changed after she got booted out for the things she created. But I do agree with Gen X Cat Mom that her aunt, tough.
Single. All right, so let's keep going. The final bit of feedback we got so far, and you guys didn't always give us a lot of feedback, was on Threads. And once again,
great.
We're at PHQ on all these social media platforms, including Threads. And Average Mikey B wrote on Threads, I was like, what do you guys think of the episode? And he just wrote, it stinks. Oh, man. Man, that is a tough review there. We want to know from everybody. You love it, hate it? All our social medias. If you're on YouTube, go down and leave a comment. We want to hear what you thought about this divisive episode.
I am feeling better. Look, I will say, just like last week and this week, I was glad to get this information. I just felt like they spent too much time on the information in both these episodes.
Okay, well,
that's
all right. All right. Well, listeners, once again, who cares what we think unless you want to write mean things about Catfish? Then please do down in the YouTube comments on social media. Hey, we are throwing, if you're on YouTube, because we have different audio podcast feeds. So if you're not on YouTube, if you're listening to only audio podcast, you want to make sure you're subscribed to all our audio feeds. our good buddy Matt Murdock's Double M, his audio podcast feed entitled Bustin' Blockbusters, double B's right there. Next week is going to have large amounts of coverage of the Wheel of Time Season 3. In fact, I'll be joining. What's fun is on many of our podcasts, I'm like the book reader, and I like, the show compares to the book this way. But on Wheel of the Time, I play the exact opposite role. On those podcasts, when the show is going, I'm the non-book reader who goes, man, I guess that's exactly like the books, huh? And so that's going to start up Season 3 next week. And then in about, believe it or not, 45 days from now,
holy cow,
you on the audio podcast listeners, be sure to subscribe to our Parsec Passion podcast feed, because we're covering Season 2 of Andor, which begins April 22nd. I've said this is the best show on television, Catfish, and I believe it currently is in the lead to win the Best Emmy Award at the 2025 Emmy Awards, which will be coming up in September of 2025. But I think Andor is going to give it a real run for its money.
All right, Bubba, we will see. As always, I will take pictures as I'm voting online to show you what I'm. Well, yeah, because it's my vote.
Okay.
I can share my vote with anybody. So I like to take pictures and share it with you so that you can write back angrily, why did you vote for that one?
That's exactly right.
It's always a delight to me, your anger.
If you guys ever watching the Emmy Awards and think this was the wrong choice, you know which one of us got it wrong. Catfish, we have been talking an awful lot about kind of big picture, not even so much about this episode. For this next segment, what would you like to have severed from your brain this week? It's got to be this week. It's got to, or it's got to be this episode. What would you like severed from your noggin?
Bubba, I feel like we've talked about this before.
Oh, no.
I've tried to keep off of this, but sometimes I just can't. So this week, I would like severed from my brain just how cruel, spiteful, and dumb some people are, as evidenced by the worship of a Keir-level egomaniac who is only out for himself and is a terrible businessman and only cares about profit for himself. That's right, I'm talking about you, Bubba.
What? Wait, you think I'm a businessman? Oh.
I think you're as much of a businessman as the person I'm talking about.
Oh, okay.
All right, what about you, Bubba? What would you like to have severed from your brain?
I would like to have severed from my brain the first and only the first person we saw huffing ether in this episode. The poor guy who was he had a little camper, right? And he was huffing out of a paper bag.
I thought he was sitting on the front, the door opening of a burned out school bus.
Heck yeah. So I don't want to see that, because that is like the depressing side of huffing effer. I just want only the positive, fun, hey, we're getting a high here side of huffing. So that's my severed this week.
All right. Well, I mean, look, I would like to have, in addition, I'd like to have severed from my mind how hot you are for Sissy when
I said she's single, Catfish.
The woman at the coffee shop sitting there with the oxygen, she's sitting right there and she is hot and she is horny.
Like me, she loves pies.
And she likes getting topped off.
Well, Catfish, that leads us perfectly into a segment we normally do next, and that's the S Severance Sillies, where a listener by the name of Greg wrote in about episode 7. He said, the Rickon's classic drinking purified urine comment, he thought that was the Severance Silly of the episode 7.
All right. Well, it was a little rough this week, Bubba. And I really only have two. One is when Cobel Vig says to her childhood associate that this town has really gone downhill. And basically, even though this place looks like a crud hole, he comes back with some Lumon level dialogue when he says, with the market readjustment from a few years ago, there was a retrenchment from some of the core infrastructure investments.
Get him a job on CNBC. Let's go.
Listen, you know what? I know what's going to happen when he has his first review at Lumon. There's going to be a whole tab on keeping words simple. And then after Cobelvig gets him to drive her to Sissy's house, as she's going in, he says to Cobel, tell her to drop dead for me.
Ouch. But honest.
Yeah, I don't know. This was not a particularly zingy or fun episode as far as that goes, Bubba. Do you have any other options?
I don't have any other options, really. I instead want to go off the board because there are only 2 episodes left, Catfish. 2 episodes left in season 2 of Severance. What do you want to see happen? Like, it feels like, without question, that, especially if you read the description for the next episode, that Cobel is going to be, in her own way, assisting Devin and Mark. And that's Outie World again. What do you want to see? 2 episodes left. What do you want to see that's going to, or what do you know, if you can't think of a specific, what's an answer you need by the end of season 2 to make you get back on the highs? You've been high on this season until the last 2 weeks. To get back on the high, what do you need in these final 2 episodes?
Well, I feel like, Cobel has developed this. She knows a lot more about how to reintegrate than anyone. So I would like to see some integration and perhaps spying by Cobel. She comes back, hat in hand, to Lumon, saying she's sorry. Now, that might be a little hard to believe because Drummond and Sissy like to chat on the phone. So I think Sissy might let him know that Cobel is going to be a danger. So it might be a little challenging. But in any case, Cobel, I think Cobel can do this. Perhaps she had some care for Mark in her heart, or she wants to use Mark to expose Lumon. She's had it up to her breathing tube with Lumon's BS.
Come on.
What about you? What would you like to see?
Again, I thought Miss Cobel was a great antagonist, both inside Lumon on the severed floor and outside as Mark's neighbor. I think, and I've kind of hinted it already, she could be anti-Lumon, but if she developed the severance procedure, I think she still has to be pro-severance procedure, right? She still has to say, hey, this is real helpful. This can be great things for you. And so that character, to me, needs to walk a fine line in these final 2 episodes. Also, this show, I love it. Best show on TV. It's juggling a million things. It would be incredible if those million things, like if Bert's mysterious 20-year past somehow could tie into Miss Cobel's, hey, I developed this. If I'm about 57 years old now, that means I developed it when I was 37, 20 years ago. Like if some of these things could really come together,
right? Well,
I think that would be strong in these final 2 episodes.
Because with some people, after Bert did a heel turn, some people assumed that Bert was the one who developed Severance. Now we know who really developed it.
Love it. Listeners, what do you guys need to see? What do you want to see? What do you want to get out of these final 2 episodes, which are going to hopefully not leave us on a cliffhanger for another 3 years? At PHQ on Twitter, Instagram, Threads, Facebook, Blue Sky, also YouTube comments. We love them. We read all of them, and we love your brilliant insight.
This show has usurped Ted Lasso. It has really gained a lot of momentum in the 2nd season. Yes. I assume they're going to plow through it as fast as they possibly can. So, Bubba, now it's time for the recap.
Let's get into it.
Where we decide which storyline we're going to follow. So, should we follow Cobelvig or Cobelvig?
Both work. I'll leave the choice to you. All
right, now let's do the second one, Cobelvig.
On the road again. Man, this was filmed in Newfoundland. Does this make you want to visit Newfoundland? Do we need Rick Steves going there talking about the great, beautiful glacier-filled bays? What did you think of this, Catfish?
Well, one thing we know about Rick is if we take him along, we'll be able to find out where to get some weed.
Right. He'd be like, huffing? No, let's make weed legal in your country. Rick Steves
Now,
insights there. Yeah.
this is beautiful. So
It
apparently
is
this
beautiful.
is Salt's Neck.
Love it.
As she drives into a town, there's a very small isthmus where there's water on both sides. And on one side, Bubba, I had to rewind to make sure that my eyes weren't being deceived. On one side, the water is liquid, and on the other side, it is frozen, Bubba.
A
This
glacier.
is the very definition of Cold Harbor. Am I right?
Wow. For me, it was the very definition of a not warm, non-ocean.
Either side of that harbor is cold.
Love it. Now, as soon as she gets to town, she wants to be presentable. She might be making out with an old chum, so she's got to brush her teeth. Let me say, dentist Dr. Mauer would approve of this beautiful dental hygiene. But that's where she saw this dude that I would like severed from my mind. This was depressing. Seeing this guy huffing, baby, huffing.
And Bubba, you see the burnt out bus.
Yeah.
You see all the buildings
Sure.
that haven't had paint jobs in 40 years. I would say that quaint would be a very generous word for this town.
Come on. Think of how you can do it for the gram, Think of how many pictures you post there. Everybody's going to think you're right in the thick of it. In fact, Miss Cobel thinks so much of it, she litters. She takes that bottle.
I'm not even sure
throws it on
how
the ground.
you can tell. Now, here's an interesting thing happens, Bubba, is that we hear her phone ring. Now, she doesn't look at it, but we assume this is. I know we see the second time. Did we see the first time? I was taking a note. All right, okay. So we saw she get a call from Devin, but ignores it. Bubba, and then all of a sudden we shift over to a diner where we see a very hearty, life blasted James LaGrosse. He is working at the coffee shop. He appears to drop some coffee, and I recognize it right away. It's like, oh, look, he's delivering ether to the dude at the table. I love this.
The customer is always right.
And then there's a woman in an oxygen mask, Rose. She is, well, they're both flirting with each other. He tells her how good her hair looks. And he said, you want some more coffee? And she says, you can top me off any time.
Now, Catfish, this place, I see this and I get upset that I eat at a Waffle House. This is a place with character. I'm going to Uber Eats from this place. This place is great. And you definitely get personalized service. She comes in and just sits down and announces her own name. Hey, everybody.
Yeah. I don't know why she would think he wouldn't recognize her, but he definitely does. Yep. She's like, he said, you want some coffee? She says, no. He says, all right, tables are for paying customers. Oh, no. And then she starts telling him stuff. She's like, the town is older than I remember. And she says, I need a favor from you, but meet me at the factory.
Yes.
Whoa.
Yeah. So, Catfish, let's just go over to the factory, and we're going to drive more through Salt's Neck to see it. You can see, even in the town, little Lumon logos that are really faint. And even at the factory, the Lumon Industries paint, it's old, and you can tell, is a shuttered factory. But why can't she say this in the diner, Catfish? She is really afraid of Lumon finding out about it. Exactly. Lumon might know.
But you know what? We get a little taste though here that's interesting that we find out later. So I'll just scoop it all in one, where he's like, I can't believe you would ask me to meet you here. Yeah. Turns out they were both child slave labor that worked at that factory. And Bubba, this is an amazing factory because Harmony tells him that Kier and Imogen met at the ether factory. Oh my God.
Would HR nowadays disapprove of that? Hey, you shouldn't be dating a coworker, especially if there's a power imbalance. Not cool, Kier. Not cool.
Right. They're going to just step past all those 10-year-olds putting things together and say, hold on a second.
You're the only one of age, Imogene. I'm going to ask you out on a date. We hope she was of age. Now, of course, this child labor, once again, everything ties together. We're going to hear more about Wintertide later, the Wintertide Fellowship, and it all goes back to Miss Wong back on the severed floor, Catfish. They want to indoctrinate people early, and they want them working early, Catfish. Youch.
I mean, hey, listen, as far as I was concerned, if I'd have started work at 9, I could have retired at 39. Give you a pension, a watch. Come on, be beautiful.
What a terrible mistake we've made. We should have started working then. Oh my goodness. And we find out a lot of things. And to me, as once again, who's somebody who watched the first season, not as a podcaster, but as somebody who just let the show wash over me. When they're saying Sissy lives by the 9, I'm like, oh, what does that mean? Is that like a place, a place on the map? But obviously lives by the 9 means that she lives by the 9 core principles, Catfish. She is a hardcore believer. In the previously on of this episode, they showed Harmony Cobel herself praying and say, place in me the values 9 that I may feel touch divine. Whew. So Catfish, looking at the 9 core principles, you've got vision, verve, wit, cheer, humility, benevolence, nimbleness, probity, and wiles, excuse me.
Wiles is a little different than, wiles is like smart, but the sense behind it is kind of manipulative and sneaky, It's like the way we think of scheme here as opposed to the way they think of it over in Europe. Scheme is just a plan, but here we think it has sort of a nefarious tint to it.
Well, do you have a favorite of these 9 core principles, Catfish?
I feel like I got a lot of verve. I'm going to go verve. That's I just want to live my life by the core principle of number 2, verve.
Yeah, that's not you at all.
Well, I know
it's definitely not benevolence.
Humility.
No. And she's considered a pariah. This is very interesting that the whole town, I'm surprised, the local hooligans haven't vandalized the factory and torn it down if it's going to be so bad. And
well, so
how does Sissy live there? I mean, if everybody hates it.
Without betraying, once again, the kind of ignorance that would cause people to forever curse the name of this podcast. So Sissy still believes in Lumon and the principles of Lumon, presumably she's considered a pariah. What? Because Lumon is a bad word in that town now because of what they did, or the fact that they left
down.
Shut down.
What's funny is it's like while they were there, theoretically, nobody complained that there was child labor, right? Like nobody had a problem with it until, in hindsight, they shut down the factory. In other words, the town didn't exist. If we trust Sissy, and I do, praise Sissy, is that the town didn't exist till the factory got there. Everybody moved there, worked as kids, was huffing at 8. Hell, crazy, yeah. And then the town leaves, and it's an economic disaster. Or excuse me, the factory closes as an economic disaster, and people stay, feel trapped. I own a house. What am I going to do? I paid money on this house. Am I going to just leave it? Because nobody's going to buy it since there's no reason to live in Salt's Neck. And it's after they leave that everybody can almost be deprogrammed from being in the cult. What do you think?
It feels like that's still too much. Someone could still believe in Lumon, and you wouldn't be like, F you. They blame the company more than they blame her, unless she was maybe in charge on the floor.
Whoa. Well, yeah, she has a plaque in her house, and we'll get to that in a bit. Sissy, employee of the month. Let's go.
I mean, so Harmony.
This
is so great. We see him driving in the truck, and I think, is she like ducked down in the front seat? No, she is taking what is clearly a very bracing and awakening, but very definitely very bumpy ride in the back of the truck. She ignores yet another call from Devin, which is interesting because I think that would pique her interest.
It will at the end of the episode without question. Yeah. But she's going to find her notes. Like, we didn't know it at the time. But she's like, you're going to treat me poor, Lumon. I'm going to expose, how you took my work, how you stole intellectual property from me. Yeah. Now, Sissy, she feels about her niece, Harmony, not a fan, Catfish. She is, there's some real kind of ugliness going on between them. Now, Harmony did kind of leave her mom. And didn't come back. We don't know if Lumon prevented it, but didn't come back when her mom was dying. And so Sissy had to take care of her mother, Catfish.
Well, here's the thing. I wonder what Harmony felt about her mother, because the reason Sissy doesn't like her is because her mother wasn't a true believer at the time of her death.
But we know Harmony cares about her mother because she had that breathing tube as part of her shrine. Now, maybe at the time it was hey, I'm going to do this so mom can be accepted by Keir and in the afterlife or whatever. But
right. Or maybe she just poked some holes in it afterwards to say, I don't want mom to be even breathing wherever she is.
Now, we talked about, how dare you, is there ether in heaven? So the plaque on the wall, we mentioned that Sissy was an employee there. Yeah. It was, the plaque reads, and it's kind of hard to read, but if you get the right angle on it with light hits it, it says Lumon Ether Youth Apprentice Matron. Ooh. So she was like the matron maybe for all these young kids working at Catfish. She received something called a quarterly striver recognition. That doesn't sound a quarterly striver at your workplace, Catfish. Are you a quarterly striver?
You know what?
Monthly striver.
I mean, I can do maybe like I can go on a 3-day strive binge at most.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Sissy has pretty much told her niece, hey, I sold all your crap for the poor. Do you think that's true? Or do you think she's just telling her this and that once she got that call from Mr. Drummond, she tried to, purge her house of the non-Lumon approved stuff?
Oh, I think that's a good idea. Yeah, it's so funny that you would assume that up until she got the call from Drummond, that she was like Team Harmony the whole way.
Yes. Look at how wonderful my niece is doing there at the corporate headquarters. You would think that for sure.
Right.
There's so much oddities, because Sissy says, and this is her sister, Harmony's sister, Harmony's mother is Sissy's sister. And she's saying, listen, that room is going to stay locked until all who remember her sit with Keir. Dang, man. Whew. That is stone cold.
Yeah.
Stone cold Sissy.
Sissy doesn't try that hard, though. Maybe that's why she was only a quarterly striver and not a yearly striver. Because
an eternity striver.
After she finds out, she tells Harmony that Mr. Drummond is called. Harmony rips the phone line out, and she is ready to go upstairs. She is going to go upstairs. But before that happens, Bubba, we've had frolic, and now we're going to have a lot of talk about woe. Now, Sissy, Bubba,
why do you bring nothing but woe into my life, Catfish? And I've said this to you too many times to count, but whoa.
You have said it exactly like that. Exactly like that. Harmony says, no, it is you who has cursed this house with woe.
Whoa.
And Harmony said, what was her mother's last words?
Yeah. And Sissy replies, your mom said nothing after I pulled the tube from her gullet. Whoa.
Boom. And then she slaps her. And then she says, if she'd been a believer... Sissy says, if your mother had been a believer, perhaps she would have found solace in the 9. Sissy's just upset because she had to take care of Harmony's mom while Harmony was at school. And then she says, and this is the important word you're talking about, Mr. Egan saw Keir in you.
Yep.
And the Wintertide Fellowship, even at the factory, no apprentice was more industrious than you. Such a disappointment you've proven to be. And supposedly, she says that Mr. Drummond said if Harmony goes back, they'll show her mercy. And Harmony says, just like you did with Mother. Boom.
Ouch. Ooh. Now, say what you will about Sissy.
Yeah.
About, she's perfect, role model.
Right. Hot, desirable.
Doesn't
all those
float
things
with
that
the
you
wind.
would say.
And did the mom need oxygen because she had spent a life huffing ether?
These are all good. These are all good questions that we need to ask the striver of the quarter. But we can't worry about that because Harmony goes up to Aunt Sissy's room. And Bubba, just like you, I thought some people on the internet are going to slow this down and they're going to point out so many things. We did see some little like clay heads. I'm sure those are all cured.
The
There's
four
a whole
tempers.
bunch of
The four
stuff.
tempers. Yeah,
Yeah,
so good.
four tempers. There's a whole bunch of stuff in there. Harmony finally finds the key to her mother's room again. Sissy is downstairs. She has decided, I care and protect Lumon so much that I'm not going to bother anymore. The one slap was it. I'm just going to stay down here now. Presumably, though, what Sissy knows is either before or after Drummond called her that she searched this room and could not find those papers. So neither does Harmony. Harmony does not find the papers, although she does strangely decide to plug in the breathing tube, connect it to the what looks like a breathing apparatus from the 1930s, and just kind of hangs out and sleeps.
Now, some people, we're going thick in the weeds.
Okay.
If you remember season 1, there's all the stuff about Gemma's candle and about how in one of his sessions with Miss Casey, the green candle with the red on the bottom was there in the room and Mark didn't recognize it. Obviously, Miss Casey didn't recognize it, even though we find out it's Gemma's candle. And people are saying, look at that breathing machine. It's one of its, the knobs, there are dials on it, is 50% green, 50% red. And so what do you think Miss Cobel is doing here? She's like, I want to experience what my mom experienced since I wasn't here when she died. Why would you do this, Catfish? Why do you believe the character did it?
I mean, I thought maybe her only hope was I'm going to plug this in and there's going to be a crud load of ether left in this thing. I mean, she is at this point defeated.
Oh, yes.
For sure. And so luckily, Hampton comes back in.
Man, let's get in there.
Beef's downstairs with Sissy, just a lot of back and forth.
Yep.
And he comes in and he's actually very nice and comforting with Harmony.
He tells Harmony he liked her mom because she hated Lumon just like he did. I thought, as you know, Catfish, you're in an intimate room on a bed with 2 consenting adults. I thought it was going to be a sex scene. Instead, it was
dirty.
Towley. Do you want to get high?
Harmony, hilarious. I haven't done that since I was 8. And that is when it hits you, Bubba. Holy cow. Kids at 8 hitting the ether. Holy cow.
Now, there is a smooch. There is a smooch. There is some connection. These 2 people went through hell together. And so they do have some connection. And they do have a little smoochy smooch. But it's a fleeting connection. They both lived too long and difficult lives to probably, turn themselves free. Because of that, Catfish, I did a little what we love to call on our podcast Wikipedia level research, Catfish. Now, what do you know about ether consumption?
I just know that ether was used early in operations,
right? Yeah, exactly.
To knock people out before they had surgery and before there was other kinds of drugs found out. And just like any drug that is good for enough for you to not feel the pain of surgery, this undoubtedly was a drug that was enjoyed recreationally.
Let me say that according to Wikipedia, really the main side effect of huffing ether is you want to huff more ether. So the user may experience distorted thinking, euphoria, visual and auditory hallucinations.
This is all good so far. Yes.
Man. And so what do you think of this, Catfish? I joked earlier that the only thing I really knew about ether is because we were kids. When we were kids, we would see those old Bugs Bunny cartoons where in half of them, he would huff some ether and then slightly go insane.
All I'm saying is this.
I knew nothing.
If you were going to experience euphoria and visual and auditory hallucinations, why would you be surprised in any way that doing it would make you want to do it some more? This is the problem with drugs, Bubba.
Yeah.
The reason why they're so hard to get rid of, if used but not abused,
Right.
they make you feel good. I mean, I just can't. I mean, that's why people do it.
Well, we know they filmed in Newfoundland. We don't know if Salt's Neck is supposed to be set in Newfoundland. But one thing we know is that drugs are cheaper up in Canada. So, hey, have at it.
All right, let's go for it. Especially if I can get one. Give me a cup of Joe and a tin of ether. I'm ready to go.
In that order, or do you want?
I mean, it feels like if
you want the caffeine after
two,
you have.
That's what I call a Newfoundland speedball.
All righty. So Harmony is still, we as an audience don't know what she's looking for. She's
Right.
like, there's no way she'd throw it away, meaning there's no way Aunt Sissy would throw this away. What is the thing Aunt Sissy wouldn't throw away? Because Aunt Sissy would burn that notebook. No, it's this kind of trophy, this award with Keir's image on it. That's why she wouldn't throw it away. So she goes out in, I don't even know what you call this. It used to be like olden times, ice rooms, right? Where you'd have an ice room where you put ice and it'd stay cool underground. And she finds a bunch of things in there, including her Myrtle Egan School for Girls yearbook, or as it's titled, Annual Reminiscence. Oh,
Love
man.
it.
Harmony was valedictorian of her school, so maybe, of course, she's smart enough to create the Severance. And she had an entire page to herself in the yearbook because she was this fellowship winner, Catfish.
Hey, congratulations.
And she had this, a major award, which is a plaque. I believe it's of Keir, but the plate on the plaque, or on the bust, I should say, says James Egan International Fellowship, Harmony Cobel, Year of Wiles.
But inside the base of the bust, she finds what she has been looking for.
Here we
go.
Now,
Bubba, the only thing I'm confused about is why would she not take this thing and just GTFO instead of parading it around in front of Sissy?
Big mistake. And we see Sissy start the fire. I wrote in the notes before Sissy grabbed it, I'm like, what kind of fool would let this notebook near fire? Come on, Harmony, get in the game. And Sissy is a true believer. We thought up until this season that Harmony was a true believer, but maybe Harmony believes once again in Keir's teachings and stuff, but maybe not the corporate part of it.
Right.
Sissy, every part of it. And Sissy's like, if somebody asks if you came, I'm going to tell them because I would never bear falsity to a steward of the Egans. Whoa, Catfish. She's in the cult, baby.
Oh, yeah. And then I don't know whether you've got this in here or what point she says it, but essentially Harmony's like, they stole this from me. And Sissy's trying to say, well, Harmony mentions it, Sissy echoes it. It's like everything you have is credited to Keir.
Of course.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Of course, Bubba.
And so what do you think of this manipulation they use on Harmony to, maybe technically this isn't intellectual property theft. If she was an employee, like if you're an employee and you create something while you're working for the company,
well, that's only if you have a signed if you have a signed contract that says that. In other words, if you're working for your company and you come up with something, Bubba, you're not like a scientist or something. That's all yours. You can patent it, etc. But no, for Keir's knowledge is for all, and she would be banished if she sought credit.
Dang,
holy cow.
Okay, now Sissy, earlier I said Sissy called this a mercy kill, but Sissy is actually saying that Harmony's mom pulled the tube out herself and was like, hey, I'm done with this. And then she starts dissing her dead sister, Harmony's mom. Your mother was a coward, more sick in the soul than in the body, filled with malice and resentment. Whoa. I thought you were different, Harmony, my flower. I tried to help you grow, but now I see you're a weed, just as your mother was, ice cold.
Holy cow. And then someone is coming. So Hampton allows Harmony to drive away in his truck in Hampton. I should have used this one, Bubba. This is a great line. Okay. He's waiting for those people to show up. He's finally he's gonna stand up. He's gonna make something out of his life. He says, come and tame these tempers, assholes. Holy cow. Harmony, once again, Devin calls. Harmony picks up the call. Devin's
time.
like, Mark's going through reintegration, and Harmony's like, oh God, is this Ragabi, the loser
Wow, did we
Ragabi?
know? I didn't realize we knew. Did we know that Miss Cobel knew about Ragabi? Did I miss that in the first season? And
No, I don't think so, which is why it just shows how much Harmony knows when as soon as she hears about reintegration, she's like, oh, that idiot Ragabi again. Am I right?
Now,
she says, tell me everything.
Now, I just want to get back. I'm pretty sure it was all the corporate heads at Lumon who said reintegration. Pshaw, not possible, not possible. But Ms. Cobel did think it was possible, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, well, maybe she can use her notebook and do a few more scrawls on it and figure out the right way for integration. Bubba, while that is it, that is Cobel Big's journey. And Bubba, now we've got to go to our strong statements. Let me get mine out of the way because now I disagree with myself. What? I don't think people are going to hate me even more after this podcast. Apparently, there was a lot of people who agree with me. Now, after going through it, there were a lot of cool things that happened. Again, we do this very kind of quickly, and so it's the first flush of feel. This episode and the last episode are going to be very important moving forward. It just really feels like we had some hiccups in the momentum of the season, but I think people will forgive me for that. And if not, they can just sever my ratings for episode 7 and from their memories, Bubba. So let's go through your strong statement.
Well, Catfish, we do have these two new antagonist characters in what you talking about, Mr. Drummond and Dr. Mauer. They both only appear in the second season. That's not a shock. Lumon's a big company. Obviously, more people would be working for them. Somebody like Dr. Mauer would have to be testing all these people down on the severance floor. But it feels like, as creepy as Dr. Mauer is and as big a physical presence as Mr. Drummond is, those two as antagonists don't compare at all to the delicious antagonist positions that Miss Cobel and Mr. Milchick had in season 1, right? Like, there's no way these two can replace.
First of all, Dr. Mauer is, while just clearly a just horrible human being, he has so little power. It feels like he's a cog in the machine. Drummond even makes fun of him for what he's wearing. Yep. So it really feels like Dr. Mauer's not a big deal at the company. He just has found, there's some people supposedly who wake up every day and are like, I would do my job for free. I love it so much. And that feels like what Dr. Mauer is. So I feel like even though he's a horrible human, he's not the main antagonist. I'm not even sure that Mr. Drummond is a good antagonist. At this point, the antagonist seems to be for everybody now, and even for Mrs. Cobel. The antagonist is Lumon itself. And honestly, I feel that Lumon, the corporation, and the values of Kier, or at least what Lumon has taken on from Kier, I do feel as if they are, we see their power everywhere, how many hands they have how many businesses they have their hands in. I feel like they are the big bad, and even though we don't have a good representative of them, I still think
if what you say, I'm going to cut you off. I apologize, but if what you say is true, and I have to be honest, I generally agree with it. But if what you say is true, and we can't even really put Helena as the big bad because we assume, she was raised like this. She may not even know that Miss Cobel created Severance. Like she was raised in this cult too. Then it's almost like we don't have any on-screen antagonist to overcome. Like everybody's just a cog in a wheel. And I'm not sure that's good for the show. I think you do need, rather than just a faceless corporation, I do think you need someone behind it. James, who is a creepy looking guy, he's not enough of a presence on the show. He's not enough of a presence on the show. Nobody would fear him, right? Like he's not you can't even describe his personality other than ice cold chili.
Well, I mean, I do definitely take your point, but I do think, because you said you sort of agree with me, that like what's even more frightening, and obviously for something that's more dramatic like this, we do want a face of it, but the fact that they're going against this huge corporation and the helplessness of battling something this huge, I think it's something that a lot of people can really vibe with, if not in their work situation, now in our present life situation, where it just feels like there's these magnificent forces that we can't even figure out how to attack them. That there's 100%. Something about that is very existentially frightening.
Listeners, what do you think? We throw out a lot of things. Probably 20% of them are interesting. What do you think?
And generous.
YouTube comments, social media comments, we want to hear it. We want to hear from you. And we want to hear from you because you are the lifeblood of this show. You can give us these comments, and you can even answer any catfish questions.
And Bubba, I've got one big catfish question today. That's the double D double K.
Oh, the Queeply Quum? That fish
the double K's, double D's.
Oh,
Queeply Quum, that fish destions.
Here we go.
All right. Why did Lumon
Yeah.
abandon this town? Did they just move the operation to China? I mean, what
tariffs? It was tariffs.
Caused them to be like, whatever we've done here, we're done with it. I mean, they've got their hands everywhere. It seems to me like whatever they're doing in this town, they could have kept doing it.
Hold on, you just kind of said it, right? Like ether is no longer used in surgeries. So what is ether used in? Well, apparently it's used to dissolve fats, oils, waxes, resins, dyes, and alkaloids. You can use ether to make plastic, paints, perfumes, and cosmetics. You can extract flavors from food. You can regenerate rubber. All of that I thought off the top of my head and not a Google search.
Well, Bubba, here's the thing I'm going to say.
Sure.
Once you've got a factory going and you're not paying hardly anything for labor, it doesn't take you much money to say, okay, well, now we're going to stop making ether and we're going to start making pairs of left-handed scissors. Our labor costs are low.
Left-handed scissors, who needs those? Have you been huffing ether?
All right, Bubba, speaking of huffing ether, we are now going to get back to feedback from our loyal listeners, Bubba.
Kyle Marsh Hall on YouTube said, Bubba, your comment about eating pho at Outback Steakhouse, that made my day. Thank you so much, Kyle. One person's day, that's all I need.
That's all you need. You got two smiley faces. That's like two persons' day. Yeah. You got a laugh from Outie Kyle and Innie Kyle. So there you go. That's two separate souls. Art of Floyd says, honored to be called your brilliant listener. It is true. I'm so in love with your shows that I'm only watching the series you guys have covered. Whoa. Yes, I love it. We are like Kier level to Arta. Oh, by the way, I'm trying to go a double M.
Arta's growing a double M?
Yeah, Milchick's mustache.
Whoa, should we do that for the finale, Catfish? That's 2 weeks. I don't even think I could grow a mustache in a month.
No, it is not happening.
C. Chester wrote and said, you guys are so entertaining, and as an American, I will count on you to help me get through these next 4 years. Oh, boy.
Well, we're going to do our best.
We'll try. Dan Campbell says,
they're trying to access Molag Bal's Plane of Oblivion to turn Jenna into a vampire, obviously.
Obviously. Okay. Obviously. Now,
Laura says, I'm worried about Devin. She's clearly the best human on the show, so I figured there's going to be a twist and she'll turn out to be the worst. Right, Laura, that is not going to happen.
Is that possible? This is Laura out in Washington State. Is there any way that Devin would become the worst? That she's got a secret she's hiding? Oh.
If that happens, I'm going to fill up the breathing machine with ether and lie down on my bed with a breathing tube.
No!
That cannot happen. All right, we got some fabulous feedback on our double D.
Double D?
Yeah, delicious doctor. That is Dr. Mauer. David says, on Dr. Mauer. Mauer equals wall in German.
Well,
my woe meter is pinned now.
And
Whoa.
Sarah kind of went the same way. She said Mauer means a mason, especially one who builds walls or enclosures. Ooh. Well, there are a lot of walls around Gemma, and we've got to rescue her. Wonderful feedback from David and Sarah.
All right, Bubba, you posed a question last week. You're like, this Lumen logo, is it blood or is it water? And Christinette simply says the Lumen symbol is a blood drop, not a drop of water.
Now, Nina Eleanor gave me this feedback where she said, some people say that water has memory. And in ancient Greek religion, the dead drink from a lake of memory or a spring of forgetfulness. So that fits with the theme of Severance. However, the importance of blood is also especially emphasized in that episode. So is that droplet in the Lumen logo blood or water? According to Nina, it's still a mystery. Which one do you go with, Catfish? Do you believe it's blood?
I go with water. I'm loving this idea. The lake of memory, the spring of forgetfulness. This is the kind of intelligent content that we don't have ourselves. So we rely on our listeners for that. Speaking of our listeners, Bubba, you've got a whole section of feedback where you just have called it Catfish is wrong. So I'm going to read it. Steven Walks Alone says, one of the best episodes of television I've ever seen.
He's talking about episode 7.
Is losing credibility by trying to defend saying it would be a 7 or even lower. Why not just say, I don't get it, and end the podcast? Now, is this Steven the one who said they were recommended to our podcast?
It's coming up.
Okay, all right. So that's another one. All right. Shirley777 said, you're so funny, but guys, come on, 10 out of 10.
Whoa.
Excellent episode. We got action, answers, romance, and more questions, and compromat. We better learn Russian.
Oh, no. Look what Get Mike said, Catfish. I think Catfish needs to bob for some pineapples after his brutal rating of episode 7. Dang. Balling out of control, said Catfish is tripping. He's grade A Hayden.
Ouch.
Every episode of Severance this season has been a 9 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10. It doesn't get any better than that. If you're a man that's ever been in real love, episode 7 will make you emotional. Catfish, were you emotional last week when that episode you only ranked 7 out of 10?
I've never been in real love, Bubba.
Oh, no.
That's the problem. Caro Joso says, I'm with Catfish on this one.
What?
Too much Gemma getting psychologically tortured with no end in sight. Yeah, the answers seemed like medicine. Frowny face.
Oh. Now, Robin, once again, another one taking you to task, Catfish. Robin said, Catfish is crazy. Episode 7 was at least an 11 out of 10. Dang. SN said, Catfish is just being a contrarian for contrarian's sake. The episode was amazing, and he knows it. Dang. And then, Catfish, here we go.
Here comes Christopher Frost says, never heard of this channel before. Came in recommended, and you absolutely lost me in the first 5 minutes. Love the honesty. Hate the take, Catfish. Ooh. All the best.
Oh, thank you, Christopher.
A new subscriber, right?
Here we go. We'll never reach 10,000. And then Catfish. Catfish, it keeps going. Our true, long time, maybe one of the people who's listened to the very first podcast we did way back when, Pat, man, he gave us his feedback.
A great supporter and a great, generous.
Oh, yeah, a great guy. Yeah. He said, gentlemen, this is Audi Pat Man writing. He said, Bubba has somehow infected Catfish with his triple S's.
Triple S's?
Scoring 7 system.
Oh, man.
Catfish, what the hell, man? A 7? I'll only accept episode 7 being a 7 is if it was a 7 out of 7 rating. Now, Patman goes off a bit into Theoryland here, so get ready, Catfish. He says,
I'm ready.
Patman writes, I'm intrigued with the suggestion that Gemma entered into arrangements with Lumen willingly. And unlike Catfish, I don't need it confirmed or explained to me immediately. I'm just glad to know where Gemma is, what she's been doing, and I feel like I have some idea of the macro data refinement team's feelings, the numbers now. Since Gemma has a Lumen chip in her head, her feelings from being in the rooms can be inputted into the brains of the MDR team as they work the number. The computer system knows what the numbers they're browsing over a screen and can link that to the emotion that Gemma is feeling from them. Whoa,
that is fascinating, Patman. Love it. Now, Rini6 says, this episode was an amazing trip. Loved it. 12 out of 10. Triple A's.
Triple A.
Amazingly Addled Adventures.
Whoa. Ignacio said episode 7 was hands down, put hands down for Jessica Lee Gagne, the director, and Daishin Leachman, the actress who plays Gemma. He said it was the best episode ever. I love the episode. Amazing scenes. They pulled it off. Each scene was unique. 10 out of 10 at the least. My favorite Gemma, when we were saying our FMK Gemma thing, was the college teacher Gemma, of course. Wow.
And a longtime listener, Camshay23, says, wow, 10 out of 10 double D's, double T's.
Double T's.
Yeah, deeply depressing and terribly torturous. Oh. I felt terrible for Gemma's innie and outie. She's being tortured. I love their relationship, and I want Mark to save her.
Now, that brings us to Gemma, Catfish, who loved last week's episode or have trouble with it. It really has put a giant focus on Gemma where maybe it wasn't in the past. And some of these comments we get, we're going to go deep in the weeds, listeners, and we'll talk them through. So Susan wrote, I think Gemma has been on that floor, the testing floor, for about 2 years, because that's how long ago she quote-unquote died. It appears that other refiners work on her files, but when Mark joined MDR, they began making progress. Mark processed the entire Allentown file in a day. It seems the work MDR is doing to create the rooms since Cold Harbor is the only room that isn't ready for her yet, and that's the one Mark's working on. Whoa! Now that's
just to talk about that. I agree that she went there 2 years ago, and part of my feeling untethered from the last episode was I didn't get the sense of when things were happening, the passage of time. I felt like they needed to help me there somehow.
No help for you. So now Thomas Rafferty, given us many great comments. Thomas wrote, when Mark and Gemma go into the infertility clinic waiting room, we hear a voice of a little girl playing on the floor. When Mark and Gemma sit down, the girl and Gemma look at each other before Gemma starts filling out the intake form. The little girl then disappears. Why was she even there? Everyone in our infertility clinic should be childless, right? Could that young girl have been Miss Wong? Whoa, Thomas.
Well, maybe somebody has a kid and they're trying to have another kid. But I feel it was there to taunt her. Now, Constitutional Carrot says, on Gemma's complacency, it's possible her escape attempt only happened 1 week into her capture, as the timeline seemed all mixed up to mirror what Mark was going through during her blackout.
Yep.
Also, Constitutional Carrot says, as a woman who's undergone fertility treatments, when you're in the thick of it, where timing and dosing and emotional fortitude is so crucial, you're often willing to overlook many of the unknowns, including but not limited to the possibility for fertility fraud, where there's nothing preventing your doctor from substituting his own material for your husband's for a greater chance at success. I ended up getting twins who are complete opposites of one another, and now years later, I still wonder. But haven't undergone the test to confirm. The self-doubt, the willful ignorance, coextent with hope is so real and genuinely came through in this episode for me. That is amazing. I love it when viewers share their personal connections with the episodes. Thank you so much.
Tier level comment from Constitutional Carrot, who has given us plenty of comments. Love it. DV, another great commenter, wrote, I may be wrong, but I thought there wasn't a confirmation yet on whether there's a third season of Severance. So maybe when we're talking about them reshooting season 2, they reshot things so it could wrap up in these final episodes. Do you think the story could possibly wrap up in the final episodes, Catfish, or does there have to be a season 3? Apple's going to make it. No. This is their biggest show.
Well, I mean, you say that, but I think that it really gained cultural cachet and a lot of attention in the second season, which they didn't know when they were planning the second season.
True. Now,
but Apple has given more. Apple gave a second season to the show called Surface, which has horrible reviews. So I can't imagine they would not. Yeah.
Surface is a one-letter title, begins with S, kind of like Silo and Severance and C. Maybe that's what they do. They thought that must be a popular show.
Perfect. That's perfect.
Now, DV writes, Catfish, he continues, and I want you to answer this. DV said, I'll be perfectly fine with not knowing what the goats are for or who the Lumon board is. And then DV ends with F-U, Lumen. Will you be fine, Catfish, if you never learned about the goats and you never see or learn anything about the Lumen board?
The goats are fine. I need it to be exposed that there really is no Lumen board or who the Lumen board is.
Okay. I could see that. I think it'd be fun. That'd be a great way to end the season.
All right, now
revealing the board.
We talked last week about now whether, because of everything we saw about Gemma, whether Gemma needs to be saved. And First Last says, I don't think they have to save Gemma, but at least an attempt to save her has to be made.
Okay.
Gemma is just the tip of the iceberg. This is exactly what Petey was talking about, the ones that never leave. There are many more Gemmas on the testing floor company-wide, but Gemma's importance is that she's the closest Lumen has come to 100% refinement.
Wow, I love that, First Class. Catfish, do you agree with that this could almost go company-wide? It's not just we've got to save Gemma, we've got to save all the ones who never get to leave the severed floor or the testing floor.
Well, the ones who are just innies, just stuck on the floor.
Yeah.
I mean, on one hand, yes. Okay. On the other hand, as a reminder, you're killing all these souls.
Catfish, do you think, I want to pause you there. Gemma has one soul that has spent their entire existence doing nothing but going to the dentist. Is anybody going to feel terrible that that part of Gemma's going to snap out of existence? I don't think anybody cares.
No, I mean, you'd be happy, but what about all the other people we know as innies? You'll be happy to lose them? I know one person who's going to be worse off for it, Dylan.
Whoa. All right. Okay.
He can't get a job.
Let me ask you this, Catfish. I'm going to pause right here. This isn't from feedback, but I saw it online as what's the big plan? What's the big plan? And somebody, I apologize, I can't remember who, it may have been an article or something. Somebody said right now to have the severance, go into effect, you have to go to the severed floor. Or if you're in pregnancy, you got to go to the birthing cabin. What if their real goal is they are sick of having to have these triggers? What if it could be automated? Hey, I go to the dentist. It doesn't even have to be a Lumen dentist, but because I'm going to the dentist, once I go into the dentist, the Lumen chip automatically puts me in severed mode. Like, what if that is their real goal? Is that?
Well, I would agree. I mean, I just naturally assumed that they want it to happen. They want you to be able to trigger it.
Yeah.
The only question is, how does it get untriggered when the person who's like, great, I just had my teeth cleaned. I can't wait to turn off so that when I come back on, I'm getting my teeth cleaned again. You'd need to be able to set a timer or something.
Again, if there's something in there's some other natural thing that would happen in your brain that would somehow trigger it on and trigger it off. I don't know. I thought that was a smart idea. Somebody who always has smart feedback is Gayleen. Gayleen, and this was you, Catfish, talking about did Gemma, quote unquote, sign up for this hell that she's in. Gayleen writes, if Gemma did consent, was it informed consent?
Now,
you know what I mean?
Bubba, some people may not know, but I do work on clinical trials, so I know a lot about informed consent. At least I do for now.
Okay.
As long as the judge says the NIH still gets money, or if they release that money. So Gemma says, yes, if so, I would love to see the consent form. That consent form would be incredible. Now, Gayleen's one of their Canadian viewers.
Oh, good day, eh? Take off.
I'm just going to continue. Gayleen continues, seeing the Scientology e-meter type device they use on Gemma made me think of Cobel and those people who have left organized Scientology but still believe in it. I wonder if she will wind up like that, rejecting Lumen but believing in Keir. Gayleen, I did talk about that in one of the episodes.
Hope that's what it is.
There are a lot of people who still believe, just as we're talking about with Cobel, still believe in Keir but thinks that that Lumen itself has abandoned the principles of Keir.
Shameful. Rika wrote, I wonder why Mark had, this was some of the trippy stuff in episode 7. She says, I wonder why Mark had a blue hospital scrubs and then the camera pans and he's suddenly in their house giving Gemma her shot. I think this is the show just trying to make us freak out. But Greg also said, why did Gemma enter the fertility clinic from the testing floor? And why did Mark enter the testing floor to give Gemma her shot?
Oh, man. Bill Cava says, I'm still on the Rosemary's Baby train. Between Innie and Outie, Helena and Gemma, lots of inseminating going on by Mark. Or is Gemma's last name Cobel, Harmony's daughter?
With Mr. Selvig. Whoa. Would you like a parent or relationship reveal like that? Like, what if Helena or Gemma were Harmony's daughter? Would you like that, or you think that's too soap opera-ish?
Yeah, no, I think that's a little bit. The only thing I would like to see is if it's going to be something like that, is to have Miss Wong be Gemma's baby.
Oh my goodness gracious!
Yeah. Now Amy from Australia says, grew up watching Dyken on Neighbours here in Australia in the mid-2000s. Proud bloody Aussie here, mate. I just butchered that, and Amy will now unsubscribe from the podcast.
She certainly will. Can I, since you did your Australian, can I do my Australian accent?
Sure, let's hear it.
Golly, where are you guys from? Hey, Jewel, everybody gives us great feedback. Jewel says, it's my theory that Lumon is doing tests on pregnant women, at the fertility clinic to find the best candidate for their project. When they found Gemma, they caused her pregnancy to fail with all the goal of breaking her down so she would be a broken person, easy to manipulate into joining Lumon. Ooh, that would be evil.
Oh, my God. And our last comment comes from Zombie Italian, who's always presenting us with what I request, and that is tinfoil hat theories. Zombie Italian says, the big twist is when they go down the elevator, they all return to their Audi forms. Okay. I don't think Gemma necessarily volunteered for this. She was in an accident, and they put the chip in after death, which is how they brought her back and told her when they get her better, they will let her out. I also think the accident was purposely staged by Lumon as they were watching her. The question is, how much of this do we get to see before the season is over? Next week, that was for episode 8, is a short episode. I mean, it was all Cobel. I think it will be a setup for the season finale. Even after Gemma's lost, there's still a lot of story to go. My disclaimer, my theories are subject to change. So I was proven wrong, as many theories were blown out of the water on this one. Zombie Italian also says, F you, Lumon.
How dare he? Sissy, get him. Guys, that is it. 2 more episodes left. Next week, we're talking about episode 9, The After Hours. Mark and Devin team with an ally. Helly investigates further. For everybody here at Double P Podcast, my name, the guy who didn't give last week's episode a 7 or this week's episode a 7, my name's Bubba. You can find me on a bunch of social media platforms at my handle Fitten Trim. That's FITTENTRIM at Fitten Trim on social media.
And I am Catfish. You can hit me up with your hate or your love at Instagram or Blue Sky. I am at G to the man. That's GEETOTHEMAN. And as always, you can also reach out to us on all social media channels at Double PHQ. That's the word double, then the letters PHQ. You can also email us. Now we're hearing from Audi Patman. I haven't heard from any Patman for a while. You can always email us at hello@doublepmedia.com. And we will talk to you next week on
Milchick Man.
We could change it to Cobel Cowboys.
Good, you.